Zach, perfect timing. You remember Abby Goodman, friend of mine you helped before?
Yeah, of course. She really your friend, or all just part of the cover you had going on?
No, no, she is. She's a spy for Noctis too, though. She's actually been working on something for me and finally managed to get some info I'd been trying to get.
What information was that?
I spent a part of my life in a rehabilitation camp after my arrest in Ophir. It was the worst time of my existence, and I've always wondered how I'd ended up here. Who had turned us in? We were just a group of street kids. We would steal food here and there, but we weren't dangerous. However, we were arrested and deported to a camp like hardened criminals or terrorists. What happened followed me for many years, until I learned that an important member of the Vori clique was responsible for the deportation of dozens of people. Most of them were innocent, but a nuisance for the mob. I want to find that guy. I want to know if it's he who got us deported. I want to understand why, and make him pay. For me and my companions, of course, but also for those poor people who hadn't asked for anything.
I understand. That man seems to be a real scumbag. I'll help you find him.
Thank you, Zach.
Could you tell me more about Noctis?
It's a wonderful city when you come from Ophir like me. You can meet people from all corporations, but especially merchants, thieves, and mercenaries. All these people were born outside a caste for the most part. They have a different vision from us of what a city should be like, and you can feel it. For them, a city is above all a place of exchange, of rest after their travels. That's where they find refuge after a hard time. That's where they make serum or lose everything. Noctis breathes way more than Ophir ever will. It is a city where all opinions have a voice. It is a far more creative and cherished city than any other corporate city. Every citizen would be ready to fight for it. Not because we order them to do it, but because it is their refuge, and without it, they wouldn't feel at home anywhere else.
What's in the nearby canyons? Does Noctis use them?
Sure, they're mostly used to navigate from the city to the rest of the world, but also serve as a defensive hardpoint. Any enemy of Noctis would be left vulnerable while going through the layout of the canyons. I've heard that some groups have hideouts there where they store treasures. That's surely a myth. On the other hand, I know that you can find colonial ruins in poor condition there.
Are you okay with Amelia?
She doesn't like me much, does she? That's okay. I mean, I still really admire her talent and her courage, even if she doesn't see how deeply abundance has manipulated her. But I'm not worried. She'll be better off in a city where she's got freedom and people who respect her for who she is, not what she represents. She's strong. She'll be fine.
You've known Phobos for a while.
For some time, yes. But we don't see each other very often. Our respective roles didn't allow us to spend time talking together. He's a wonderful person. He'll free his people, I'm sure of it. He's a forward thinker, Zach. He's intelligent, and even if he suffered a lot because of what normal people like us did to him and his people, he never gave up. He never sank into hatred. He hoped to build their nation. And he's a loyal friend. We are lucky to have him with us.
What do you think of Scott?
I think that he hides his suffering behind his madness. He's a fallen genius, but under the thick skin that is his madness, you can see a unique spirit glowing. He cares a lot about you. I even have the feeling that you're the only one he has. Take care of him. I know that his heart is still with abundance, and that gives me pause, but you can only see the friend in him, almost a father. Let me manage the rest.
You're close to Lucky?
I've known him for a while, yes. since he managed to break away from his master. He was a real scumbag, you know? The merchants are not all as well-intentioned as Dandolo is. He really had a rough time, and it's made him bitter. But he can be so charming. I like him a lot, even though I wonder whether sometimes he needs a friend more than a fling.
What can you tell me about Dandolo?
He's a complex man, Zach. Not the type to sum up in a few words. He's smart, warm, generous, and completely dedicated to his city. But he's also very manipulative, and he can sometimes be coldly pragmatic. That scares me. I love him like a father, and I don't really want to see him lose himself in his power like many others have.
How the hell did you go from being an artist in Ophir to a spy in Noctis?
Less of a stretch than you think. After all, a good lie, like good art, has to be close to your reality, right? Truth? I was an orphan. Parents did die, and I was on the street and got sucked into a gang. We all got arrested pretty quick and ended up in a rehab camp. Swore I'd die there a couple of times because I wasn't gonna let them brainwash me, and they didn't take too kindly to that. I took the beatings, but got to keep my mind. Then, the day came. Noctis attacked. They freed a lot of us and brought me here, took care of us, gave us a chance to have lives again. So, I felt like I owed them something in return, and offered to go back to Ophir as a spy. Good thing, too. Otherwise, who would have torn you out of Victor's grip and brought you back here?
You always been alone? Or never had anyone you cared about?
You mean guys? Why? You the jealous type, Zach? Afraid of some competition? Scared you won't measure up? There was one guy, Nick. I was only 10, but I was head over heels for him. He died in the rehab camp after we were all deported around the same time, though. Other than him, couple flings here and there, but nothing much more serious than that. You asking because you heard the rumors in Ophir that I'd sleep with anyone wearing a medal?
No, I was just...
I did what I had to do, Zach. To do my job. Never cared about those guys. That's the truth.
You just did what you had to do. You miss making music?
I miss performing. I mean, I still sing for myself here and there, write new lyrics when I feel inspired. But the moments I shared with my audience, it was so intense when I felt everyone humming with me.
How about you sing for me?
Maybe another time. But I'd love to. There's something intimate in sharing your art, like sharing your soul. It's why I feel like music can unite people across corporations, on opposite sides of wars or causes. It's simply beautiful. And in between the notes, our differences seem to disappear. The second all this ends, I'll get back to it. It's what I was born for, and I'm not one to deny destiny.
Zachariah, you look good. Better than I. As if that was hard to accomplish.
What do you know about the exchange?
I am not really into tourism, you know. I think that it is better to ask someone else if you're looking for specific information on a neighborhood. All I can say is that back when I used to go there, it was a commercial neighborhood.
How long have you known Amelia?
Since she was a kid. She was quite a cute child, yet so agitated. She's actually no different. She is still agitated and doesn't realize the risks she takes. Mark was more cautious. I really hope that she'll become more careful. I would be very sad if something happened to her. Sometimes I have the feeling that she thinks I'm a tiresome old man. It would be a problem. I mean, I'm not that annoying, am I?
What do you think of Andrew?
He looks like you. He has a lot of talent, you know. It is too bad that he is bitter. He makes me think of your master. What was his name again? Ah, yes, Sean. It sounds like he's after the whole planet. It is a pity for such a young man.
Do you like Nisha?
Yes, I like that little one. First, because she saved your life, and then because she's a charming young woman. Very bright. I really wonder why she spends so much energy on that lost city. I am sure that she could have had a wonderful future with us. Even though you have to recognize that Abundance's spies are much less pleasant. Just the thought of that awful Victor.
What do you think of Phobos?
He's an interesting character, no doubt about that. He shows great intelligence, which shows that mutation doesn't affect cerebral faculties, at least the first generation. And to a certain extent, I understand his desire to improve the mutants' living conditions. We are terribly unfair to them, that's for sure. They are sick, and instead of helping them, we treat them like slaves. However, I think that he is going a little too far with his mutant nation story. I don't see why they should create a mutant nation on its own. He should instead make people within the corporations think differently.
Tell me more about your friend, Mark Reacher.
I don't really like to stir up old memories about him, his disappearance. I miss him, you know. He really was a very good friend. We met when we were young. I was researching animal mutations. But, of course, I didn't have a specimen in town. My professor introduced me to a young Mark Reacher who had a promising future. He took me hunting. It was amazing. There were so many things to discover out there. It was the first time that I went out, whereas Mark had already been exploring the canyons with his mother since his early years. The shock was enormous. I wanted to get out of the rover all the time and run after a beast or collect a plant specimen. Mark would obviously prevent me from doing so. It was funny. He was an adventurer, but he was, in the end, more reasonable than the naive scientist that I was. And it remained like that until he went missing. Alas. I do not like that man. He's intelligent, but shifty. He wishes to fire up another war.
Hey, Brad.
Zachariah, how's the hunting?
Can you tell me what's going on?
Yes, of course, of course. You see, the focus of my study is the planet's fauna, all the insects and animals brought by the settlers that have since mutated, much like our own mutants, if not in a more spectacular way. Now, I've studied the most well-known of the creatures, of course, but I have heard of much more rare specimens, which I would go to any lengths to study. It would offer great insight into the animal mutations. Anyone can admire their beauty, but what we need is to understand how they came to be what they are. We need to study their anatomy, but they are, of course, rather dangerous.
So you need a hunter to find them and bring back your specimens. I might be able to help. What are you after?
Well, there is so much. There's a black mole and a shield toad. Also a locust I've named Locusta tempestatus, or more colorfully, the storm locust. It's been spotted in the tunnels beneath Ophir.
What can you tell me about the storm locust?
Locusta tempestatus. Well, very little but what has been told to me, actually. It is a creature, by all word, that seems to feed on electrical sources. Looks like an ordinary locust, which we know also shares the taste for electricity, but it's much larger. Perhaps its purportedly massive thirst for electricity is simply in proportion to its size? I don't know, but I'm hungry to find out.
What do you know about the black mole, besides the fact that it's black?
Well, its name is somewhat of a misnomer. It isn't really black. Darker than the others for sure, but not black. Its skin, though, seems to sweat venom. Wonderful, isn't it? Imagine. What a wonderful defense.
Yeah, wonderful. Always dreamed of catching poisonous moles.
Isn't it fascinating? A beautiful scientific mystery.
Already expecting the worst, but, why is it called the shield toad?
Those who have had the rare opportunity to see this beautiful creature say its skin is nearly armor-like. In fact, nothing seems to be able to pierce it. No arrows, not even conventional weapons. The hunters take their best shot, but always run away terrified. Delicate little things humans are, but there has to be an explanation for this extraordinary mutation, and I must find it.
Caravans arrive just going straight to the palace. When will I ever get my delivery?
Stop being so impatient. Prince wants recollection of the journey and news updates from our different contacts. It's normal and necessary. Without his vigilance, Noctis would be nothing more than a pack of misfits.
Yeah. But while the prince is chatting, my goods will sit like perishable.
Hello, Phobos.
Hello, Zachariah. What can I do for you?
What really happened with your mother? I must say I didn't understand much. That stone? The police's arrival?
My mother was helping me as much as she could to carry out my mission. She would provide me with information, sometimes hide mutants on the run before they could leave the city. She was a wonderful woman, Zach, but someone turned her in. Fiorello heard and raced to get me out with your aid. Though how I yearned to save her, to get to the slums to warn her. But I knew I could not. You, though, could. The stone was a token of recognition. She knew what it meant. If she was turned in, she had to leave as soon as possible. And if she couldn't, the drawing was made with an ink made of jellyfish venom.
But why give her that poison?
I didn't want her to die, Zach. I loved my mother. But I knew what the ASC would do to her in their jail. If they caught her, she needed a way to avoid being tortured.
When did you discover that you were a mutant?
The first symptoms of mutation appeared when I was very young. I must say that I can't really remember very well. My mother noticed them, and she taught me how to hide the marks, even though I think that I didn't know what it meant. She was hoping to keep me close to her, but as soon as the first marks appeared on my face, they spotted me out right away. I will never forget my arrest, how violent they were toward my mother. I was just a kid. I was sent to one of the farms on the outskirts of town. That's where I learned what it meant to be a mutant.
What's the Mutant Nation? You created it, right?
It is a little overblown, but I was one of its founders, among many others. Of course, other mutants were living outside the city as runaway slaves, hidden here and there, stealing whatever they could find in order to survive. A small community had settled in Noctis and benefited from the hospitality of the merchants, who allowed them to move around freely. However, we did not have any way to defend ourselves or plan a future. We were all spread out. A few of us decided to get together. We found a place, a very unique one, and we soon started doing it up, bringing in equipment and erecting houses. As for me, I especially wanted to free as many brothers and sisters as possible. So I went back to Ophir, and I realized that nobody cared about mutants, especially if they didn't look very smart. I began to help dozens of them escape. And our nation soon began to grow. There are a lot of us now, and I hope that all mutants will be able to live there someday.
What can you tell me about Ophir's mutant pen?
You saw for yourself. Violent slave drivers and harsh work conditions have reduced mutants to beasts, to the point where even some find themselves yearning to be petted. I do not hate humans, you know that, but when I think about that place, I feel outbursts of hatred. I would like to break the walls and see my brothers and sisters get out of that hell. Someday, I think that I'll do it. I'll destroy the pen.
What does Noctis represent for you?
It is the city of our allies. Without it, Mutant Valley would have probably never come into existence, even if some of them think the opposite. This town is welcomed and still welcomes many runaway mutants. Here they can free themselves from the servile state they were in. Noctis is somehow the freedom school for many of them. Of course, it remains a human city, and segregation is sometimes present even if it is not official. And I don't completely agree with Dandolo's decisions, but overall it is a place that I love that boasts of mixing everyone together, of bringing all philosophies into dialogue with each other, and of welcoming the hopeless.
What do you think of Amelia?
She's an interesting young and courageous woman, but Abundance brainwashed her. As long as she hasn't completely cut ties with the corporation, she will remain wary of everything, of anything foreign. I think that she has some pity for us mutants. That's more generous than what humans usually give us, but we don't need pity. We are a new people, not a gang of monsters regretting who they were. Maybe she will come to realize this. She is not stupid, and when it comes down to it, she has a thirst for freedom despite all the brainwashing she went through.
What can you tell me about Andrew?
He is a hurt man. He hides his suffering under a cynical and detached attitude. But he lost way more than his arm, even if I do not know what it is. If you could help him heal his wounds and become what he ought to become, you will discover without a doubt that he is a very giving friend. And maybe he will be less bitter.
What do you think of Nisha?
She's an unusual woman, Zack. She was locked up, tortured when she was a child. She managed to get out of the situation, and despite what she went through, she went back to Ophir under a false identity. Believe me, you have to be strong to do that. She is the best possible spy. She helps us as much as she can by providing us with vital information on the slave transfers so that we can go free them. And I know that Dandolo respects her a lot. But watch out. She is far from being the sweet and smiling young woman you met in Ophir. She is brilliant, generous, and she can also be merciless.
What do you think of Scott?
He's a great scientist, most likely a very good doctor.
Is that it?
Something bothers me about him, Zachariah. No doubt he appreciates you a lot. I learned that he went through a hard time, but I have a feeling that his sweet eccentricity is hiding something. But I don't know what, therefore I won't say anything else.
Hello, Amelia.
Hey. You know I'm mad at you, right? You realize what you did to me? You stole my rover, took me to that strange city, and left her in the middle of nowhere. I know that you were nice to me, but still.
Dandolo wants me to bring your rover back here.
Now he's just showing off. At least he knows how much a machine like that one is worth. Unlike you do realize that my rover dates back to the settlers? I cared for her like a mother, maybe even more. Bring her back to me. She's got sentimental value and she's all I have left. In the meantime, I'll go find the tools to repair her. And I'd also like to talk to you in private, if you don't mind, regarding what you discovered in Ophir.
What do you think of Phobos?
I don't really know what to think of him. He must have had a horrible life. He's a mutant, and we all know how they are treated. And you know, that liberation story, that mutant nation thing and all, freaks me out a little. He's very smart, however. I sometimes even have the feeling that he can guess what we're thinking.
What do you think of Nisha?
She's stuck up. She was pretending to be a princess in Ophir. Here, she's the boss. Like, I've got a lot of experience, and you don't know anything. Pisses me off. And she seems to forget that she wouldn't have gotten out of Ophir or gone on trips without me. Silly girl.
What do you think of Andrew?
Besides the fact that he still has to fucking square it with abundance, he isn't too bad. Street smart, and his being a smuggler gives him an edge. But he isn't into me, and I'm not into pining over a guy who doesn't bother to look at me anyway.
You must have traveled a lot. Could you tell me more about what you discovered?
You know, when I'm being sent out to explore, it's for prospecting. I drive around, take samples, map out the area, that kind of thing. I discovered 2 mines last year. We'll put them into service once we connect them with the shadow paths. Wow, it doesn't sound as exciting now that I think about it. But I don't care. Despite all of this, I can go almost anywhere. I see landscapes that others will never see, and sometimes I stumble across amazing places. I'm not doomed to remain under a shell of metal.
Tell me more about you growing up.
What's there to say? I was a ward of the state in Abundance's centers. It was lonely and, you know, the other kids were assholes, but I gotta tell you, those times my dad returned from his missions, and I got to see him, best times of my life.
Wait, what? I thought the reason you'd been placed in a center was that your dad disappeared.
Who the hell told you that? No, I was real young when they took me away. My parents were always off on missions, and someone had to take care of me, you know? I don't even remember living with them. Honestly, I don't want to talk about it.
Sure, sorry. Yeah, of course. Besides your rovers, what else makes you happy here, Amelia?
Nature. Not the bugs or animals and stuff, but the landscapes, you know? Sunsets, mountains scraping the sky, red water trickling down the hills in the spring, gray lichen floating in the morning breeze. Back in Ophir, I used to take the rover out before sunrise just to take it all in. Always managed to put things in perspective, you know? How small we all are.
Amelia the poet philosopher. Who'd have thought it?
Why you gotta be a smartass?
Aha, I'm not. I was being... Just never saw that side of you. The passion. Makes me want to take a rover out before dawn tomorrow.
Well, let's go together. I've always wanted to share it with someone.
Are you seeing anyone at the moment?
What, you mean a boyfriend? No, not right now. You applying for the position?
I mean...
Look at your face! You can't even come up with something to say. Listen, you don't look half bad, soldier. Won't take too much for me to cuddle up with you at night.
Hey, there you are. Your meeting go well.
As well as hoped. Thanks.
Then let's get down to business. You know who I am. You know my past. You know what little I have left. What are you gonna do about it now is the question. You gonna use what you can against me? Or let me carry on with the small life I've managed to build?
What happened that day?
I had a surge. A big one. One even the Masters never saw coming, literally. Before they even knew what was happening, I electrified everyone and everything around me. It screamed like thunder from my body, before the ceiling itself finally collapsed in on me. I woke up in the infirmary without an arm, surrounded by all those powerful Masters who stood there shaken, whispering, their eyes still filled with fear. Then everything went dark again, and I woke up in a sand sail.
Why aren't you with your family?
Right, my family. They were small-time merchants. I'm sure real proud their son was gifted with Technomancy and was joining the school. But they were also scared as shit of me for the same reason. We're all scared of what we don't understand. It's why so many fear us both. Not that I'm sure any of the Masters even asked them to take me back. It was more important to them that I disappear for good, to hide what happened, keep the illusion of their infallibility intact. Also, to hide the fact they had people among them who had the power to take down entire buildings. No, I had to go. In some ways, they even did me a favor.
And you never tried to reconnect with them? Even after you got free?
No, I looked for him. Even tracked down my father. He was just this old man. Didn't even recognize me. And if he did, he'd probably just hate me for what I've become. A crippled outcast, not something you'd put your pride in. So I let it lie, just walked away.
What about your gift? I thought people died if they didn't use their fluid.
It's a myth. There are rogue technomancers out there. Not a lot, but a few. They know how to control their fluid surges. Probably the only thing that piece of shit Marcello could take credit for. He introduced me to one of those guys, and after that, I learned to control it the hard way. The irony, no? I'll never be a technomancer now, but I control the fluid better than any of Abundance's masters. Not for power, just to make sure my own brain doesn't fry.
What have you been up to since you left?
What have I done? Well, after spending 10 years of my life as a slave trying to pay that piece of shit Marcello back for what he called my debts, traveled in his luggage hold, did his dirty jobs, whatever he needed to get his business going. Carried crates, drove sand sales, shoveled sand, ran errands, but mostly just picked his customers' pockets. I traveled a lot, though, if I'm going to find any silver lining in it, and have earned my damn place here in Noctis. Even if the price of that has been rarely sleeping in a real bed or reading a book that wasn't about accounting.
Should have remembered you. Back when we were kids, the world just revolved around you.
Really? How so?
You ever even know the influence you had? How much the other kids tried to be you? How much I did?
The influence was just an illusion. I don't like remembering myself like that. Even if it's right. Feel like I was just another manipulator, though. Manipulating people to get what I wanted out of them. To let them get what they wanted out of me. All just a time I'd rather forget, honestly. If you don't mind.
I want to help you. What can I do?
Some things can't be healed, Rogue. Like that scar across your face. I'm guessing you got it the day I lost everything. And was reduced to a sad, broken, armless shadow of what I might have been.
Some things can't be healed, but most can be mended, friend. Let me ask around. It might be a long shot, but maybe you'll find a new reason to call yourself lucky again. We'll find someone who can lead you back to your gifts. I promise.
I may be bitter, but I'm no less grateful. Thank you, Zachariah. A little show of kindness goes a long way.
I can't deal with it right now, but when I get a chance, I'll look into it.
That's good enough for me. You'll come see me later then?
Yeah, I'll come find you later.